was a Tuesday night in late November. My two roommates were both out of town, one visiting family, one at a work conference. I'd done everything right. Locked the front door, checked the back, turned on the porch light, left the hallway light on low the way I always do when I'm the only one home. I made dinner, pasta, nothing special. Watched something on my laptop, completely, aggressively ordinary. And then, around 11, I heard it. A knock. 3 of them. Slow, deliberate. Coming from inside the wall beside the kitchen. Not the exterior wall, the interior one that separates the kitchen from the hallway. I set my fork down. I told myself it was the pipes. Old house, old plumbing, the radiator settling in for the night the way it sometimes does. I turned the volume up on my laptop and kept eating. Then it happened again. Same wall, same spot, same rhythm. 3 knocks, evenly spaced, patient almost, like someone counting. Pipes don't count. I pushed back from the table and stood there in the kitchen, fork still in my hand, just listening to the absolute silence that followed. Nothing. The hum of the refrigerator. My own breathing. I walked to the wall and pressed my palm flat against the plaster. Cold. Noticeably, wrongly cold. Not just cool. Cold. The heating had been running all evening. The rest of the kitchen was warm. That patch of wall was not. I convinced myself it was insulation. A gap somewhere. I went to bed. At 2:47 in the morning, I woke up. Not gradually, instantly, like a switch had been thrown somewhere in my brain. I lay in the dark, flat on my back, staring up at the ceiling, still, completely still. And I realized what had woken me wasn't a sound. It was the absence of one. The house was too quiet. There's a baseline noise to a house. The fridge cycling, the faint push of traffic outside, the building itself existing. All of it was gone, like the whole structure was holding its breath. I sat up slowly. The room felt smaller. I know how that sounds, but I mean it literally. The air felt pressurized, dense, the way the inside of a car feels in high summer when it's been sitting in the sun. I reached for my phone. No signal. Not one bar. In the middle of a city where I always had full reception. I got up. I don't know why I got up. That's the thing no one tells you about real fear. It doesn't always make you freeze. Sometimes it makes you move toward the thing. Some animal part of your brain trying to locate the threat so it can calculate a direction to run. I stepped into the hallway and stopped. My roommate's door was open. It is always closed. He's borderline obsessive about it. It's been a running joke since he moved in. That door is closed when he's home, closed when he's gone, closed when we have parties and the whole apartment is loud and full of people. It was open. Wide open. The darkness inside the room just sitting there. I pushed it wider with 2 fingers. Empty. Bed untouched. Nothing out of place. I stood in the doorway for a long moment, telling myself I must have walked past it earlier without registering, must have misremembered, must have... And then I heard breathing. Not from inside the room. From behind me. I spun around. The hallway was empty. But the bathroom door, which I had left open when I brushed my teeth an hour before bed, was now pulled almost shut. Not latched, not closed, just pulled too. Like someone had reached around the edge of it and eased it toward the frame from the inside. I ran. I don't remember making the decision. I found myself in the kitchen, keys already in my hand, yanking the front door open and stepping out into cold night air. I stood on the front step in bare feet for a full 2 minutes, phone pressed to my ear, trying to get a signal, watching the open door behind me. I didn't go back in. I slept in my car. The next morning, in full daylight, I went through every room, every closet, under every bed, behind the shower curtain. Nothing. No sign of forced entry, nothing missing, no explanation. But my roommate's door was still open. And on the inside handle of the bathroom door, the one that had been pulled shut, there was a dark smear. Narrow, like the back of a knuckle dragged across painted wood. I never found out what made that mark. I stopped trying to. The night I'm about to describe, I've reconstructed in my head so many times that I could draw you a floor plan of it, tell you exactly where the shadows sat, where every piece of furniture was. And every time I go back through it, I land in the same place. Someone was inside my apartment. And while I was walking from room to room looking for them, they were watching me do it. I lived alone on the 3rd floor of an older building, thick-walled, quiet, the kind of place with long interior hallways and a courtyard-facing window that blocked street noise almost completely. I liked how sealed it felt. That was the exact quality that would later terrify me. I got home late from a shift, around midnight. Dropped my bag by the door, went to the kitchen, poured a glass of water. The apartment was exactly the way I'd left it that morning. Bedroom light off, closet door half open the way I always leave it. The reading chair by the window sitting at that particular angle, slightly outward facing, the way it always sits when I've been using it. Everything correctly, precisely in its place. Except for something in the bathroom mirror. I'd passed the bathroom doorway on my way to the kitchen, glanced in the way you do, reflex, habit. And for a fraction of a second, less than a breath, I saw something in the reflection. A shape behind me, taller than me, darker than the hallway behind it should have made it. I turned around immediately. Nothing. The hallway was empty. The shadow I thought I'd seen was just shadow. The overhead light at the far end was off, and the angle played tricks. I stood there for a moment, heart beating in my throat. Then I walked to the bathroom, turned on the light, and looked at myself in the mirror for a long, deliberate moment. Just me. Just my own face, looking slightly gaunt under the fluorescent bulb. I turned off the light. I told myself I was exhausted, but I didn't go to bed. I sat on the couch with the television on, volume low, and I watched the hallway. Not intentionally. It just kept pulling my attention. The dark rectangle of the corridor at the far end of the living room. The way the light from the TV didn't quite reach back there. The shapes the shadows made. 40 minutes later, the chair moved. Not violently, not the way it happens in movies. Just a short, soft scrape of wood against hardwood floor, a few inches to the left. The way a chair moves when someone stands up out of it. I was on the couch. I had been on the couch for 40 minutes. The window was closed. There was no draft. No animal. Nothing. I called out. My voice came out steadier than I expected. "Hello?" The silence that answered me was unlike any silence I had experienced in that apartment before, because it had texture. It felt held, maintained, like something on the other side of it was working to keep it that way. I called a friend and kept her on the line while I went through every room, closet by closet, under the bed, behind the couch, inside the shower. Nothing. Every window locked, front door still deadbolted from when I'd come in. No one. She stayed on the phone with me until I fell asleep with every light in the apartment burning. In the morning, I found it. In the bedroom closet, the one I'd checked, there was a second hanging rod, set deep in the back, half hidden behind my winter coats in the shadow. It was the kind of thing you don't notice because you don't have anything hanging on it. But something was hanging on it now. Pushed all the way to the far end. A jacket. Dark. Men's. Heavy canvas material, like a work jacket. Not mine. Not mine. And not anyone I had ever let into that apartment. I called the building manager. He told me the previous tenant had vacated 8 months before I moved in. That the unit had been professionally cleaned. That he couldn't explain a jacket. Neither can I. I've thought about it almost every night since. The jacket, the chair, the shape in the mirror I told myself wasn't there. What I can't stop thinking about, the thing that keeps me up now, years later, is that whoever left that jacket in my closet had been inside the apartment long enough to take it off. The house I was renting had a finished basement. Washer, dryer, some storage, shelving, a utility corner with the water heater and the circuit breaker. Nothing unusual. I was down there a few times a week. The door to it opened off the kitchen, heavy wood, old hinges, and a spring-loaded latch mechanism that only engaged if you pushed the door firmly into the frame. If you just let it swing shut on its own, the latch wouldn't catch. It would drift back open, an inch, sometimes more. First week in the house, I noticed it had drifted open overnight. Pushed it shut. Didn't think much about it. Second week, same thing. Third week, I started pressing it firmly every time I closed it, testing it, holding it shut for a 3 count to make sure the latch had set. It still drifted. I told myself it was the house settling. A slight lean in the foundation, creating enough of a grade that gravity would eventually overcome the latch. Rational, measurable, explainable. Fine. What happened on a Thursday afternoon in October was not fine. I'd worked from home that day, kitchen table directly facing that door. I had closed it at 8 a.m., pressed it firmly, heard the latch click, even pushed against it once to confirm it held. Then I sat down and worked. 6 hours, 4 feet from that door, in a quiet house with no music, no television, just the sound of my own typing and the occasional car going past outside. At roughly 4 in the afternoon, I looked up from my screen. The door was open. Not drifted open, not slightly ajar. Open. Wide. As though someone had reached down, turned the handle and pulled it deliberately toward them from the other side. I sat absolutely still. The opening was completely dark. The light switch is on the wall at the top of the inside staircase, and I could not reach it without stepping through the door. And I could not make myself step through the door. I sat there for what felt like a long time. Long enough to notice that the cold air rising from the basement was sharper than usual. Long enough to notice that the normal ambient sounds of the house, the fridge, the furnace, had gone very quiet. And then, from the darkness below me, I heard it. Footsteps. Not a creak, not a pipe. Footsteps. Deliberate and unhurried, moving from one side of the room to the other, and then stopping, directly below the spot where I was sitting. as though something had crossed the room to stand beneath me. I left through the back door without touching anything, called my neighbor from the yard. He came over within 5 minutes, and we went through the basement together, flashlights, the whole thing. Every corner, behind the shelving, behind the water heater, inside the storage closet at the far end. Nothing. Nobody. The small windows were sealed shut with decades of painted-over latches that would have broken apart if anyone had tried to open them. He said raccoon. He said it confidently. Raccoons in the walls, moving through the space between the joists, creating sounds that seem directional when they're not. I nodded. But I went back down alone after he left. Something made me. I stood at the bottom of the stairs with the overhead light on, and I looked at the concrete floor. The far end near the wall, where the footsteps had seemed to stop, had a thin layer of dust over it. Construction dust, the fine gray kind that settles on untouched surfaces. And there, pressed into it cleanly, were prints. Human footprints, adult-sized, both feet. Facing the stairs. Facing me. I put 3 locks on that door the following morning. A sliding bolt, a chain latch, and a rubber wedge I drove under the frame every single night before bed. I lived in that house for 4 more months after that. The door never drifted open again. But some nights, lying in bed in the dark, I would hear it. Faint, almost imperceptible. A sound like sustained pressure against wood, like resistance being tested. Like something on the other side of that door pressing its weight against it, gently, patiently, checking to see if tonight was the night I'd forgotten to lock it. I never did. But I don't think that's what kept it from opening. I think it just wasn't ready yet.